In this video, I'm going to show you how to draw a shaded sphere. And this is called a tonal drawing. In a tonal drawing, you can see that there's no outlines around the form, that the entire drawing is made with different values. And the way we build up our values using graphite is by hatching or cross-hatching. Now, prior to this shaded sphere exercise, you did some value scales. So after completing your value scales, you're ready to move on to your shaded sphere. Let's go over some of the names for the different areas in the lights and the shadows. Looking at this drawing, the lightest light is called the highlight. Around the highlight are some transitional lights. They're very, very pale, and I get them by kind of tickling the surface of the paper with an H pencil. Very, 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 very lightly. Past the transitional lights and moving into the darkest area of the shadow, the core shadow on the form, there are midtones. Sometimes these are called middle values, but I usually just call them midtones. On the bottom, you'll see it gets a little bit lighter, and that's reflected light. If your object is sitting on a ground that's light or white, there's going to be light bouncing around, and that light will be reflected onto the bottom surface of your object. This area here, this dark shaded area, is called the cast shadow. So the core shadow is on the form, the cast shadow is the shadow cast onto the ground. The darkest part of the cast shadow is always going to be immediately under the sphere. If you look at the background, the shading of the background helps to define the sphere. So against the lighter side of the sphere, you're going to have a darker background, and then that darker background will gradually transition to a lighter background, so the background against the dark side of the sphere will be lighter. So gradual transition of the background. Now you know why you had to do all those graduated value scales to help you understand how to create a tonal drawing. Okay, ready to start the drawing. Now, I already got this started, and what I did to get it started was I very, very lightly took an H pencil and I used my entire arm the way I showed you in class when we were working on ellipses, and I drew a light circular form. After I did that, I took my H pencil and I traced around an ellipse shape, which will be the cast shadow. After that, I just used a kneaded eraser to clean it up a little bit. Then I took my H pencil and I will continue to show you how I did this, but I lightly went over absolutely everything that will be shaded in the drawing with a wash. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm purposefully really, really lightening up the edges around that highlight. And I'm not really worried about defining the edges with the shadows in the background yet. I'm just simply going over the entire paper, everything that will have some kind of value. You go over it using hatching. Okay? Now, hatching and cross-hatching isn't something that we naturally know how to do. You know, we don't wake up one morning and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I can do this. I know how to do hatching and cross-hatching. It's something that's going to require some practice. After you're finished with the H pencil, you're going to then move to your HB pencil. Now I'm applying a little bit more pressure. I want to stay away from the transitional light area that's right next to the highlight as I'm putting down this slightly darker value right in here. I also don't want to forget about the background. Now, as I'm working on the background, look what I do. I'm going to work in like this, and you might notice how when I bring my hand around, you'll be able to see it. I am holding my pencil with the overhand grip and holding it further back. And whenever you want to get a light shaded area and you don't want to press down too hard, you use that overhand grip and you hold your pencil further back. Let your pencil be a little bit loose in your hand. Now, what you probably are noticing is I am now cross-hatching. So I'm working up the background with this value, and I'm hatching in different directions. So I may go this direction for a little while, which is kind of my normal default direction. But then I want to work on getting this edge a little bit clearer. So I come in here, work on the shadows, getting closer to the edge, but then I'm going to pull that shading out. Now I'm coming back in, and this is like the completely opposite way that I usually shade, and then I'm working on that. So that's how you start to get your edge a little bit more defined. Now I'm going to go a little bit faster with my HB. Most of the work that you will be doing, most of the value that you'll be building up working this way will be with the lighter pencils. You're only going to use the dark pencils a little bit at the end. So, all right, and here, you need to work on that edge right in there. And step back, look at it a little bit. I see I need to work on the transition in here a little bit more. And you can see how I am using cross-hatching. And I'm crossing my original direction, going that way again. Some people, when they work on these, when they do this type of drawing with the hatching and the cross-hatching, sometimes you'll see the hatch marks very, very clearly, and then sometimes they will just kind of blend out, and it'll be like kind of a shimmering tone to the whole drawing, but you may not see the hatch marks as clearly. Okay, so working on this area here. Now, right in here, this, I think, right in there is always the trickiest part to get, because that area is where the sphere and the background are about the same value. I'm getting ready to work up some of the area here and get this darker in the coarse shadow. And again, you can see how I am now crossing my original hatch marks. As I'm working on this, I want to be careful not to get too dark in the reflected light area. But the reflected light area is always going to be darker than the highlight and then the lights. Okay. So as I'm working on this, I'm imagining a light is shining on the sphere, and the light's coming from above and on the right, shining down on the sphere. Okay. So now I'm starting to push a little bit harder with my pencil. And want a nice smooth transition in here. So far I haven't worked enough on the cast shadow, so I think I better get back and do that, but I'm playing around a little bit with these transitional lights using my HB pencil. Okay, let me work a little bit more on this cast shadow. Now, as you're working on the cast shadow, you want to keep the edges of your cast shadow kind of blurry. And if you look at a lot of cast shadows, and I encourage you to do this, play around with cast shadows, like shine a light on your hand and cast a shadow on the wall and play with, do the finger puppet thing and pretend you're, I don't know, a wolf or a bird or whatever. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is, if you start looking at cast shadows, right, that are cast on a surface using a direct light source, you're going to find that the edges of the cast shadow are blurrier where they're further away from the object, and then as they get closer to the object, they get darker. All right, now I think it's a good time for me to work on switching my pencil up to the 2B pencil. Okay, with the 2B pencil, I'm going to start right now by getting some more darks in on the dark side of my background so that the light side of my sphere really starts to pop out. So this is all 2B pencil, and every time I say 2B, I always think about that Shakespeare quote, to be or not to be. Yeah, so here I go, working on that background, 2B pencil. Did you see how carefully I worked on the area that was like right next to the sphere, and now I'm going faster, a lot more energy on this part in here. And then I'm going to slow down a little bit. I'm going to work on this transition in there, get that to be a nice smooth transition. All right, and then lightening up on my shading in here. Now with my 2B pencil, I'm going to start getting darker on that side of that sphere. Okay, with my, this is again the 2B pencil going darker, and I really want to work those darks up for my coarse shadow. And with the 2B pencil, I am going to stay away from that soft edge that I worked so hard to create, that transitional light between the highlight and then those midtones. So I'm working on getting this darker with the 2B, get a little bit darker there with the reflected light. And here I want to clean up that edge a little bit. So I hardly use an eraser. Like the main thing with this drawing is you don't want to use an eraser at all with your shading. So you want to build up your light, your shadows, and leave your lights. You want to build up your shadows gradually and not have to go back in with an eraser. Now, at times, you may want to just do this and kind of clean up an edge. So I'm just going to clean up the edge of that sphere a little bit. Maybe the edge of that shadow. Clean up that edge, because I'm going to leave the ground. I'm going to leave the ground as white. Now, under here, this is going to get a lot darker. I want my cast shadow to get darker. I also want it to show some of the reflected light on the bottom of the sphere. Okay, so I did grip my pencil a little bit differently there as I was swinging it around, building up that value. So this is 2B, my 2B pencil. And, check out the different directions that I go and how I change my direction every so often. With the cast shadow, it's really important that I would say that the majority of your directional lines that you're using when you're hatching or cross-hatching should reflect the surface. Okay, so I'm continuing to work with my 3B pencil. I have a firmer grip, as I mentioned, and I want to get darker here. And as I'm getting darker closer to the sphere, I'm just taking my pencil and just lightening up on the pressure as I get further from the sphere. So just building up the values like this. I want to go darker and pull that darkness, pressing down pretty hard away. Now I'm going to back up, have a good look at this, see what's going on. All right, progressing pretty well. I do want the edge of the sphere to be nice and clear. So even though I am not using any lines, I do want the edge of the sphere to look clear. Now, as I backed up, what I saw was I really need to get darker with that edge of the sphere right in here. So I'm going to go darker and bolder and take a little risk here, going darker and bolder. But also, as I'm working on that core shadow, I want to lighten up as I get into some of those edges of those midtones. But I'm pushing down pretty hard to get that pretty dark. Okay, working in there. So I'm lightening up, just kind of tickling this edge in here because I want to keep that nice soft transition. And here, I want to go darker, so I'm pushing down harder. Now I'm used to shading and painting with my hand hovering in the air. However, if you're not used to doing that, that might be a little bit hard for you. Don't forget to use a cover sheet. Any type of piece of paper that you could put under your hand and lean on as you're working. So, just happen to have a piece of paper here. So if you need to do this, and you need to get in there and keep your hand anchored on the paper as you work, that's absolutely fine. Now in here I want to go get that line cleaner and darker. So this would be a cover sheet. You would use a cover sheet. You don't want to move the cover sheet around, but you can just keep it in one place. But I like to work with my hand hovering in midair. All right, I'm going to get this darker down in here. Still working with the 3B pencil. And I've looked at enough shadows so I know what I'm aiming for. For you, you're just going to be copying that image. Well, you can copy what I'm doing here, but also really, looking at the image on page 9 of the PowerPoint presentation so you can see what we're aiming for. Okay, that's enough of the 3B. I'm going to switch to 4B. And with my 4B, I'm going a little darker on this side. So I'm pushing down harder, going darker in there, getting in there with my 4B. Make it darker. I got a little straggly line right in there. I do not really want to get that dark, but that's actually fine. You know, sometimes you might not intend something, but all right. This edge I'm going to fix right now in my 4B. Pull that around here. Work up some more shading there. Probably notice I just grip my pencil in a different way, like more like when I'm writing. I would hold the pencil like that. So as I push down harder and I'm using softer pencils and I want to go darker, I'm going to hold my pencil like more like I would if I was writing. Okay, I gotta watch my edge in there. I would clean that up a little bit because I went over there a little bit too much of the edge. So that's why your kneaded eraser is good. It's really nice to clean it up. And to continue to kind of clean that edge up, I would go in here, I would go back with an H pencil and very, very, very lightly work with that transitional light in here. Because I don't want the edge to be stark white, then it would look like a paper disc that was cut out. So I want that edge to have a very, 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 very pale shimmering light on it. Okay, back in my 4B pencil, and it's working that around here. Okay, now I want to work with this transition a little bit more. And I'm backing up. Looks like it's a little bit pointy on the top. I want to fix that a little bit in there. Okay, so background, again, working with the 4B. I think I need to switch back to my 2B pencil to work with this transition again. So that's my 2B pencil, working up that transition in here. And I'm going to go this way again, back to my kind of default mode of shading. And I've decided I want the background a little bit darker in here. So this is my 2B pencil, working on that graduated background. I'm going darker. Definitely want to go darker in here. I made a squeaky mark and maybe I didn't mean to get it that dark, but I could go that dark. And it's fine if the, when you're working on your hatching and cross hatching, there's going to be areas that will be like more expressive, like you'll have more expressive mark making and you'll actually see the lines, and then other areas where your work will be much more subtle and maybe the lines, even kind of disappear as you're working with them. Okay, so time for the 6B. And all I would do with the 6B, and I would anchor my hand right there, is I want to get this darkest shadow right there with the 6B. So that's on the cast shadow on the bottom. That's the only place I'm going to use my 6B. I want really dark in there. And I'm going to just lightly just make that fade into the other hatching. You see how little I use the 6B, having a look at it. It's looking pretty good. Maybe fix up that edge a little bit more right in there. Maybe I want to go darker in here, and I would go back to a 4B. I don't think I want to do a 6B in the background, although you could if you like drama, you could go really darker. And now, this background, I'm feeling like using this kind of vertical movement would work well, just building up that background. And again, guys, take a step back every once in a while, see what it looks like. Almost done. Still think that top could be a little bit more rounded in there. A little different shape right in there. And then what I would have to do is work this out, work that shading out into the background, so I don't have a dark line around my sphere. And as you're drawing, I just want to step back once in a while, evaluate what you've done, and what looks good, leave it alone. And what you need to improve on, work on that. So that's it. That's the shaded sphere demo. Have fun with your drawing.